actually coming to on Thursday to New Orleans. So twice in 6 days after not being here for an entire year. But as I travel, it's been very interesting to me to hear the questions that I am asked on behalf of us all. Because there's a lot of different issues going on in education, as you know, a lot of different conversations, a lot of hot topics. But here's what fascinated me from the start. Because the very first question that I got in a phone interview related to great teaching and what we all do and how to make it all work was this: what's the secret? It's the first question I ever got in a phone interview, right? Oh, hi, Mrs. Shearer, yeah, congratulations, you were just awarded. Great, now what's the secret? As if any of us have that secret, written down on a little piece of paper and it's folded up and it's in a little lockbox in our classroom, and if somehow we would just let it out, somehow everything would be okay. And then along those same lines, why can't we fix our schools, right? I mean, why? And, by the way, give that to me in 20 seconds or less, because that's all you have for this soundbite, right? Because surely it's something simple that we're all just missing. This next one is probably my favorite, and perhaps you've had to answer this yourself. Yes, I know there are challenges in education, but if you had a magic wand, right? If you had a magic wand, what would you do? And instead of trying to ever answer that question point blank, I answer it by saying, I don't have a magic wand. Nobody does. If we did, don't you think we would be wielding it with reckless abandon? Nobody has a magic wand. There are no quick fixes, no silver line. But every now and then I get an intriguing question, and this one I really liked. I was in Washington State with a group of community leaders, people from industries, and they said, okay, if you could build your own school, what would you want? Now that's a fascinating question for a teacher or principal, right? If you could start from scratch and build your own school. But you know what? When I was asked that question, I didn't think about the building, I didn't think about the curriculum, I didn't think about the technology, and I thought about the teachers. The first thing I thought about was the teachers. And if I really had the opportunity to start my own school from scratch, well, let's wipe the slate clean, because now I have some of my own questions. And these would be my questions in order. And I know that if any of us were in a position to hire our own teachers, there's a whole bunch of things we want from those teachers, but this would be my number one question. Do you love children? And I know that some people who are not in education, roll their eyes and they say, oh, you teachers, it's all about warm and fuzzy, touchy-feely, it's all about the love for the kids. That is my number one question. Do you love children? And when I say children, of course, I mean of all ages. And when I say love, I mean that unconditional type of love, right? That unconditional type of love. Knowing at every level that our children will probably fall short of our expectations just about every day of the week. They will talk while we are talking. They will text behind our back. They will stay up too late the night before so they're not refreshed, and they probably ran to school without eating breakfast, and probably they're bringing to the classroom a whole host of issues beyond their control. And they have dreams, and they have needs, and they are flawed, but the question is, do you love them anyway? And sometimes I'll cross paths with a new teacher, and they'll say, yeah, but I love history. See, I want to teach because I love history, or I love math. And that's great, and we'll get to that, because passion for your subject area is very, very important. But number one, do you love students? Because if you don't, nothing else is going to matter. And if you can get past that question, I have a two-part, a part A and a part B. Part A would be, what's your energy level? I mean, seriously, what is your energy level? Because as we all know, it's the fuel of energy, it's the exchange of energy that fuels the classroom. And if you do not bring your energy to the classroom, your students will know it. And if you say, oh yeah, well, I'm a high energy person, I've got it, I am ready to go, I am energetic, well, that's great that I got a part B. Part B is, can you sustain it? Because it's one thing to be excited about teaching your first year. What about your 15th year, your 30th year, your 40th year? It's one thing to be excited, as was already pointed out, on August 8th when schools open again. It's one thing to all be excited when the school year opens. What about January? What about April, May, during testing season? We're all energetic on Monday, ready to go. What about Friday? Do you still have it? I mean, energy is so important. If you can get past those two questions, the last one, will you embrace the complexity of education? Because it's never going to be easy. It's never going to be easy. And if you come into the profession thinking, oh, well, in the first year or two, I'm going to get it all figured out and then I'm going to coast, we all know you're in for a rude awakening. It never gets easier. It always gets harder, as teachers and principals are expected to do more with less, for less, with every passing year. Can you wrap your arms around it and embrace it anyway? And that requires a commitment. Because again, so often I hear people say, oh, well, I'm just going to teach for 2 years before I go on and get my real career. Or, oh, teaching is my backup plan. Teaching's my backup plan. It's my plan B. Wow. Well, that's quite a plan B. And frankly, I think our kids deserve better than that. And I say that not only as a teacher, but as a parent, because this is my little girl. Yep, this is my little girl at her preschool graduation, and that's the boy she says she's going to marry. And when I think about all the things that I want for her, and right now we're using this new term, and I'm going to put it in quotes because it means different things to different people, college and career ready. As a parent, I know exactly what that means for my own kid. I know what it means for her to be college ready, career ready, world ready, life ready. I know. And the trick is, of course, for me and for all of us as educators, to want for other people's children what we want for our own. I want it for my own child. I need to want the same thing for her future husband. I don't know him very well, but it doesn't matter. To want the same thing for both children. And you know what? Somebody asked me once, they said, you're an AP chemistry teacher. Why do you even care about the education of young children? And my first thought was, wow, beside the fact that the foundation for absolutely everything I do is laid in early childhood and elementary school education. Besides that as an AP chemistry teacher, I have absolutely nothing without everything that starts before me. And I repeated that question to one of my colleagues, and he said, just talk about Carly and how important it is that she gets a great education. But again, when I was asked that question, I didn't really think about my own Carly, because, Carly has an AP chemistry teacher for a mother. She has an AP physics teacher for a father. Yeah. Her grandmother, both her grandmothers are retired elementary school music teachers. My cousin's a teacher, my sister's a high school English teacher. Carly's covered, right? She's going to marinate in academics and school and education her whole life. When somebody said, why do you care about the education of young children? I thought about all these other little faces. I thought about all these other little faces, the future scientists of America, the future musicians, the artists, the writers, all these other little faces who deserve the same that I want for my own little girl. And of course, we know that when we talk about school, we often focus on academics and college and all that, but there's a career in college and career readiness. And there's this whole huge group of students that are pursuing everything from health professions to culinary arts and construction and all sorts of things, and we have to serve them all. And it's amazing, and I know that there are a lot of elementary school educators in this room, early childhood and elementary, and I know you do not get the respect that you deserve. I know you don't, because my mother was an elementary school teacher. I know you don't get the respect for laying that foundation. That's part of what we have to do as teachers. We have to help people understand what it is that we do that's so fascinating and so difficult. Again, my little girl, I tried to do everything right as a parent. When she was born, I started reading to her. I know about early literacy and all that. And she was into a lot of things, but frankly, when I sent her to kindergarten, she was really not all that fired up about reading. And I was concerned because I had read to her for so many years, and I'm thinking, what is it going to take? What is it going to take to turn the tables? And, I read her this book, Chicka Chicka Boom Boom. We know this book. Yes, of course we do. I read her that book I don't know how many hundreds of times before I sent her to school. And then she went to school, and her kindergarten teacher did this whole unit around Chicka Chicka Boom Boom. And they were reading it, and they were singing about it, and they were writing poems about it, and they were listening to it. And she took them out on the sidewalk and put coconuts in their hands, and they broke those coconuts open, and they smelled them, and they tasted them, and they did surveys about who liked it and who didn't. And all of a sudden, it was a science experiment. They were collecting data. And all of a sudden, my little girl comes home, and she's fired up about reading. And she's fired up about reading. And again, I'm a parent. I'm a teacher. But sometimes it takes that other teacher, that other voice to really make it click. And I just get to benefit from it. Society just gets to benefit from it in the end. When I came home last June, from a trip to China, I came home to this note left by my little girl on the counter. I missed you so much. I love you, with this little heart, with this little tail. And her preschool teachers had always